ja nunga unyana woli munu kandi butumi kanja beka chimo jakmu goro kuchile koli sinyindo soli bedi butuma bole kanja unyana woli usatut ujoja mantu chimo di musuare mba tissue paper ngaru beten tantan manjum aken lata gor mbanu foken barepo ujoja mantu jukumete ni le sumut bante ni le boli boli bante nu chimo e chimo fuifa foli po fugale gal woto ujobe di loptani ya lofimi panungole no wonk nomba yankonem 1025
ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون.
Hello there, this is Grts News, broadcasting for viewers in the Gambia and around the world. In our top stories tonight, the Gambia government extends the state of public emergency for another 7 days, effective Wednesday, 1st July 2020. Chief of Defense Staff briefs President Barrow on the outcomes of a 2-week tour of military barracks and installations across the country. And cabinet ministers respond to a raft of questions at the legislative chambers during the second ordinary session of the National Assembly sittings. The National Centre for Arts and Culture and the British High Commission joined forces to remember Star Leader and Avro York aircraft, which crashed at the Banjul International Airport in 1946 shortly after takeoff. Plus, the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission engages victims and perpetrators on forgiveness and reconciliation for peace building at an emotional ceremony in Kololi. CGTN explores how governments, companies and investors are adjusting to the potential of a post-COVID-19 greener future. These and many other stories coming ahead in the next 45 minutes. I am Fatu Elika Mloshi, and thanks for joining us. Hello there and welcome to Grts News. Now we begin this cast with a press release on the extension of the state of public emergency. His Excellency President Adama Barrow, in consultation with the Ministerial Subcommittee on COVID-19 and based on the advice given by the Health Experts Committee of the Ministry of Health, has decided to extend the state of public emergency in the Gambia. In exercise of the powers conferred on him by Section 34(6) of the 1997 Constitution, President Barrow has declared that the state of public emergency continues to exist in the whole country for 7 days, effective today, Wednesday, 1st July 2020. The public is also informed that the COVID-19 emergency regulations issued under the Emergency Powers Act shall continue to apply during the period of the state of public emergency. Meanwhile, the public is reminded that COVID-19 is real as the number of cases recorded in the country is on the increase. The public is also advised to take all precautionary measures to protect themselves and prevent infecting others. The government gives assurances that all efforts are being made to prevent and contain the coronavirus from spreading further as it continues to monitor developments within the ECOWAS region. The release ends. Now, still on presidential matters, the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Gambia Armed Forces, His Excellency Adama Barrow, Wednesday morning, received the Chief of Defense Staff, Lieutenant General Yakuba Drame, at the State House. This follows his nationwide tour of military barracks and installations across the country for consultations with the troops and command, as well as familiarize himself with the living conditions and other issues affecting the men and women in uniform. As we hear in this report by Mamadou Jallo, the meeting also provided a platform for the Army Chief to debrief the President about issues confronting the military.
This meeting comes against the backdrop of a 2-week tour of military installations by the Chief of Defense Staff, Lieutenant General Yakubu Drame, and his staff for consultation with the troops and the command, among other things. The Armed Forces Chief believes it was necessary and highly important to hold what he called a constructive engagement with serving members of the armed forces, to bring them up to date with the current realities and hear their concerns and challenges.
It was a very successful tour. There was this constructive engagement between the command and serving members of the armed forces. It was an open discussion. In other words, trying to know their living and working conditions, equally use that moment to share with them policy initiatives and directives. In other words, what is my aspirations in regards how do we move the armed forces forward. And whatever the aspiration is should be strictly in line with how do we reorganize and restructure the armed forces in line with the expectation of the Commander-in-Chief and by extension in line with the expectation of every Gambians and non-Gambians alike, including our development partners.
They say further again is important to help the troops and command adjust and better prepare themselves to face the challenges and expectations of the Gambian people.
The aim is to see how each and every one of them can equate themselves within that wider concept and initiative. Because once they do that, they take ownership. And then, of course, they would work towards the success of what we want to achieve as a team. From all indications, the outcome was quite impressive and worthwhile.
Lieutenant General Drame praised the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Gambia Armed Forces, His Excellency Adama Barrow, for his commitment and said the meeting provided a platform to debrief him on his tour.
The President is very much committed to the cause of the armed forces. Having listened to the debrief we gave him, in other words, action after review, because we felt obliged to meet him, to tell him about the tour, the outcome of the tour, and he was very impressed about the outcome. And as usual, he's taking ownership of the armed forces once again, and he's giving all his assurances to say he would stand by the armed forces in our collective pursuit to bring about the much necessary peace and tranquility in this country. In so doing, of course, there is a need to meet some of the logistics support, which is more than willing to support the armed forces in moving forward.
He also commended regional and local authorities for their positive assessment of civil-military relations, which remains a cornerstone of his policy.
One of the key issues during the tour was how do we assess the relationship between members of the armed forces and the civilian community, which, by the way, they form the majority. And from the response that we receive, the comments and contributions that we receive from governors, important stakeholders, and of course community leaders across the length and breadth and country was quite impressive. We've been told that the armed forces, they're always willing, ready to give all they can to win the hearts and minds of every Gambians. I'm really encouraged and thrilled by such a comment coming from governors, mayors, community leaders, and all the international partners.
He therefore concluded by calling for closer collaboration and partnership between all services as well as civilian authorities to enhance peace and sustainable development. Mamadou Diallo, GRTS News.
Meanwhile, the Chief of Defense Staff earlier on Tuesday concluded his nationwide familiarization tour of military barracks and installations across the country with a visit to the State Guards Battalion in Banjul. CDS Drame engaged his troops on fruitful discussions and noted some of their concerns. GRTS's Isa Tuketa has been with the team since the beginning of the tour and prepared this report.
But what I've seen, the engagement has been very constructive, very frank, and very participatory. With this kind of trend, I'm very optimistic. The future is very bright for the armed forces. The men are willing to move forward. They've realized some of the past mistakes, and the most important thing is they want to march forward with pride and dignity so that they can be seen as the people's armed forces.
Quite reassuring and deeply fitting, the CDS outlines his goals and commitment to national service as he concludes his nationwide familiarization tour of military installations across the country, rebranding the army, building civil-military relations, ensuring professionalism in the discharge of duties were a key part of issues that shaped discussions during his tour.
It is our strong conviction that military professionalism cannot go in tandem with politics. Meaning, if we want to engage ourselves in politics, that is a recipe for degradations of professional competence within the military. And equally, we made emphasis on the need for members of the armed forces to do away with what I call tribal sentiments. Because in the military, tribal sentiment will not be condoned.
For the Army, the tour was an opportunity to highlight challenges and problems they face in their work. The CDS has promised diligent strategies to address them despite the limited resources.
I articulated what I envisioned in the context of what the armed forces should look at, giving 3 dimensions. What do we want to achieve now, which is the immediate objective? What should we achieve? Basically, is the medium-term objective, and what could we achieve as an institution? That is the long-term objective.
The tour has been described by many as apt and well-timed, a move inspiring hope in these men and women in uniform to move forward and discharge their duties in the best interest of the citizenry. Their work is quite daunting, but as is duty bound upon every man and woman in uniform, these soldiers are more committed than ever to preserve national security and protect the country's territorial integrity and sovereignty. After what has been an exciting and thought-provoking 2 weeks of engagement, the top military chief is greatly pleased by this engagement with his troops amid efforts to reform the security sector and build a professional and exemplary army. For Grts News, this is Aissatou Keita.
Awesome. Over now to some military matters, where the second ordinary session of the National Assembly continued on Wednesday with a heated question and answer session. The ministers of Higher Education, Interior, and that of Information and Communications Infrastructure earlier today responded to questions on issues relating to institutions under their respective ministries. Ominjai was following proceedings and she now reports.
Several members of the executive joined lawmakers in the second ordinary sessions of the National Assembly. Deputies opened the day with the Minister for Higher Education, Research, Science and Technology, who responded to questions on the preparation of annual activity reports of institutions under his office's purview.
The University of the Gambia has submitted the annual reports to the National Assembly up to 2016. However, 2017, 2018, and 2019 annual reports are being compiled for submission to the National Assembly latest end of August 2020.
The Gambia's Information and Communication Minister, Ibrahim Silla, also joined lawmakers to set light on measures initiated to ensure equal opportunities for all opposition parties in terms of equal airtime on GRTS and developments in the National Broadband Network.
The Honourable Minister for Information, Communication and Infrastructure tells this August Assembly the measure in place to ensure there is equal opportunities for all opposition parties for the state media.
In terms of airtime allocation for political party broadcast or statements, it is executed in consultation with the Independent Electoral Commission, the IEC, during the election cycle, and GRTS will continue to do so to ensure fair play and in fulfillment of the wishes of the political parties and their supporters.
Can the Honourable Minister tell us, he said in his answer, that the purpose of the ACE is to increase efficiency. Can the Honourable Minister tell us, since its inception in December 2012, how effective has it been in terms of cost and service? And how has it trickled down to the user, to the end user? Thank you.
This infrastructure, together with all others like the ECHO one that was to help the national connectivity, has really helped us to have first-hand customer experience. Now we are talking about 4G in this country. So that's one of the benefits. Quicker, faster internet connectivity, and also, better call experience.
Deputies were also briefed on the containment of cannabis and other illicit substances by the Minister for Interior, Yankuba Sonko.
I live in the heart of trafficking, I would say, and that is Kololi, Taban. And now hard drugs are being trafficked around that area. Is there anything you can do to shut down that area if we are really serious of controlling trafficking in this country? Because that is the heart of trafficking.
I will engage the Director General of the Law Enforcement Agency to do something about it as soon as possible.
The marathon deliberation at the Assembly chambers brought much needed answers on many issues for deputies who are set to continue proceedings in the second ordinary session with more cabinet ministers. Ominjai, GRTS.
Ominjai there. Now, the National Centre for Arts and Culture, in collaboration with the British High Commission, on Tuesday unveiled a commemorative inscription for victims of the 1946 air tragedy at Banjul International Airport, which claimed the lives of 25 passengers on board the Brazil-bound aircraft. The commemoration was held at the Arch 22 grounds in Banjul and was presided over by the Minister of Tourism and Culture, Hamad Ba. Senabo Jain tells us more.
The plane crash killed 25 passengers who were on board a British Airways flight that was traveling from Brazil to Europe. The crash happened at the Yundum airfields on the 9th of September 1946. No Gambian died in the incident, but the plane came down on farms belonging to people in Yundum, a nearby settlement from the crash site. The fatal accident, according to historian Hasum Cisse, can be remembered for two main reasons. Commemorating those who lost their lives during the crash, the outgoing British High Commissioner to the Gambia, Sharon Wardle, commended the National Centre for Arts and Culture for putting a memorial plaque at the Arch 22 in Banjul to remember those who lost their lives. This memorial will help the families of the victims to remember their loved ones who lost their lives in tragic circumstances, as well as remember what has been the darkest moment in the country's aviation history. Zainabu Jan for GRTS News.
And now engaging victims and perpetrators in transitional justice and peace-building process, the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission on Wednesday facilitated an interpersonal reconciliation of victims and their perpetrators. The emotional ceremony held at the Commission's Hall in Kololi is meant to promote national healing, reconciliation and foster a sense of forgiveness. Under the theme, Never Again, Ibrahim Nsane was at the venue and he prepared this report.
The Truth Commission aims, among other things, to prevent a repetition of the violations and abuses suffered under the past regime. In her speech, Tabunjai Sar of TRRC said the forgiveness and reconciliation was requested by witnesses after testifying before the Truth Commission. In his emotional speech, Major Abubakar Ba seeks forgiveness and expressed regret over the beatings meted on Omar A. Jallo. He said he was young and under command when the incident happened.
I want to say to Honorable Oye before this very audience that in 1996, the pain I have inflicted on him, and also by extension to his family, that once again, before this commission, I want to humble myself and to say to him that I'm sorry for that, I'm sorry for everything, and I'm sorry for every other thing to him personally, and also by extension to his family.
Omar A. Jallo has accepted apologies from Mr. Ba. He urged Gambians to forgive one another to preserve the existing peace and stability of the country.
I know at that time what you were doing to us, it was not because you wanted to do it. You were commanded to do it. Because those who commanded you were there standing, watching whether you do what they ask you to do. From my deep heart, I have forgiven you, and I still hold you as my brother and my nephew as I held Usman. And I want you to feel that way and be free to visit me or come and see me or talk to me. This is what Gambia wants.
Prison officers Ibrahim Ajame and Malang Tamba expressed regret on the torture inflicted on Laminja, Soriba Konde and Falu Sise during their incarcerations at Mile 2 prisons.
Lengthily, almost 20 years in the prison services. I've never had any problem with any individual, both prisoners and prison officers. They were the only one that I have problem with on that fateful day. So I don't have much to say here, unless to seek for their forgiveness, to have something, to have it in their heart to forgive me and my colleague Tamba.
It is so shameful, so sorrowful for the Gambian people to entrust you with an office that taxpayers are paying you and you break their trust. It is very painful. What we did it, we break the trust of the Gambians by doing whatever we did to Soriba Konte, Laminja and Falu Sise. Maybe in one way or the other, personally I have offended other people knowingly or unknowingly who have not come out here. I am asking for their forgiveness. That is Soriba Konte, Laminja and Falu Sise and any other persons that I may offend in one way or the other, knowingly to me or unknowingly to me. I am very sorry.
Soriba Konde, an inmate, also seeks forgiveness from Ensa Baji for testifying against him at court. Mr. Baji, a former Inspector General of Police, has forgiven all those responsible for his suffering and humiliation he is faced with during his detention at Mile 2.
I've forgiven you. I've forgiven everybody who participated in one way or another. And those who are speculating that I'm a criminal, I've forgiven them because they don't know.
Commissioner Imam Jallo said reconciliation and forgiveness is important to TRRC and the nation, adding that all is based on speaking the truth and is the only truth that can set an individual free. Ibrahim N. Sane, Grts News.
Well, now the Action Aid the Gambia, in partnership with Njawara Agricultural Training Center, on Wednesday transferred cash to 100 farmers from the Central River and North Bank regions in the drive to building resilience. The support is part of a project dubbed Promoting Agroecology and Eco-Restoration Practice in Central River and North Bank regions of the Gambia, with funding from the European Union. Here's an excerpt.
It is my pleasure to participate in today's handing over ceremony of financial support to the vulnerable farmers. I am particularly delighted to be associated with Action Aid International the Gambia and the funding partners to come up with such a project that will assist our farmers in the area of small ruminant and the poultry production schemes within their communities to improve their production and the productivity. Action Aid support to communities to establish seed and cereal banking schemes with assorted seeds and cereals as a contribution to resilient building. It enhances adaptation mechanism for small-scale farmers to cope with climate change, which is in line with our government agenda, especially with the able leadership of His Excellency President Adama Barrow. The project is aligned with our sector policy and strategies, the National Development Plan 2018-2021 and the SDGs, especially SDG Goal 1, End Poverty, Goal 2, End Hunger and achieve food security, improve nutrition and promote sustainable agriculture. And that the final one is Goal 8, Decent Work and Economic Growth. Promote sustained, inclusive and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment and decent work for all. So this shows that this project is very important. It's here to support our farming communities, especially the women farmers. Because in this country, any community you go, a lot of women are engaged in small ruminant production and also poultry production, and even the youths of this country. So this support is timely. In addition, supporting to an enabling environment and capacity development for sustainable increase, diversified production for nutrition promotion in agriculture. Livestock and aquaculture through enhanced value chain for agriculture and natural resource commodities. Therefore, it is with higher expectation that the project will strengthen the farmers' capacity building, including climate smart agriculture.
The Minister of Agriculture there. Now, the Gambia Chamber of Commerce has donated $50,000 to the performing arts industry through the National Center for Arts and Culture. The presentation ceremony was held at the NCCE grounds to 10 different groups. Ibrahim Cham covered the event and he now reports.
The Gambian entertainment sector is one of the hardest hit industries reeling from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Multiple shows and musical jamborees have been halted due to the strict government lockdown measures. At a press briefing at the National Center for Arts and Culture, the Director General, Mr. Hasum Sise, disclosed that his office approached GCCI seeking assistance to support Gambian artists during these trying times.
So we approached the Chamber of Commerce and Industry to extend a hand of support to the artistic community, and they did so with 50,000, which we have decided to share out among like some few artists as a token of expression of solidarity, with them in these trying times. Government is working on doing something bigger, for the artistic community, through the Ministry of Tourism and Culture.
The 50,000 dialysis has been shared amongst registered Gambian artists with the National Center for Arts and Culture, and it has been distributed amongst 10 groups, from writers, actors, musicians, and traditional singers as a priority. Big Far received his share of 5,000 dialysis, but believes this move comes at a right time.
And we need this support. For all along we've been, talking about this, we've been asking for this help because we have lots of concerts that has been postponed and we don't have anything coming to us right now because we don't have any concert, no show, no nothing. And if you don't have any concert, we cannot have money. And other countries are doing it. Their governments are pulling out money and give it to their artists to support themselves. And I think that's what we need right now.
Sheikh Omar Sawane, a renowned Gambian actor, applauded the gesture, but believes more can be done by stakeholders.
The COVID-19, whether we know it or not, has affected everybody across the board. So this is a gesture that it's long overdue because some of us have shows that are on TVs. Due to the COVID-19, we depend solely on sponsorship from corporate bodies or individuals or institutions. But if we write our sponsorship letter now, all we get back is due to the COVID-19, there is no business. So no business, no sponsorship, none of our shows can come on TVs. So we thank GCCI for this, but we're looking forward for more support from the central government.
Scores of Gambian artists have lost investments in shows due to the coronavirus pandemic, making the performing arts sector eager for measures to be eased to at least make up for what they have lost. Reporting for GRTS News, I'm by Ibrahim Cham.
Now, a $6 million solar project is ready to be implemented in the Upper River region to empower young people of the region between the ages 18 to 35 years. The project has 5 components and it's funded by the European Union and will be implemented by Techifi and GIZ. Our URR correspondent, Seydou Kamara, tells us more.
Estimated to be worth over $6 million, the solar center project is set to be rolled out in the Upper River region, targeting young people between the ages of 18 to 35 years. The project is funded by the European Union and implemented by the Techifi and GIZ. The governor of the region, who doubled as the chair of the Solar Centers project, highlighted the significance of the project whilst assuring the people of transparency in rewarding contracts to deserving youth.
Many projects will come. They will be either unfinished or failed, because there are no structures that are put in place at the beginning of those structures or those projects. That is why we deem it necessary to come up with a board that will look at the affairs of this project. Looking at the concepts and also those people around the project, we feel it is going to be very successful when we start implementing the project.
The governor also added that her office, which will monitor the implementation of the projects, shall serve the role in ensuring that the projects reach to the internet beneficiaries.
So the sustainability aspect of the project is very, very important. That is why we call all of you here to be in line with what is going to be explained here, so that anybody who is lucky to benefit from this, because we understand an application form is going to be sent out. There is going to be advertisement in radios. There is going to be sensitization up to district level, up to ward level, so that those that are qualified would apply.
The chairman of Basse Area Council for the Danjo commended GIZ for supporting the young people of the region and the country at large. Chairman Danjo said the sustainability of the project is a major concern for the council.
If GIZ is able to bring such a magnificent project for us, a project that is amounting over $5 to $6 million for the use of URL, I think is very important for us to grab it and make best use of it. We would like to emphasize more on the sustainability aspect of it. We all know there is no project that will have a meaning without a sustainability aspect. So the sustainability aspect of it is a great concern for the council. The council and the governor's office and all key stake players in this project.
Officials of GIZ said the Solar Center project has 5 components in supporting the youth of the region in different services such as packaging, food processing, street light, business center for solar equipment.
The first component is the cooling center, and then the IT center is the second component, and those comprises the first phase also. The cooling center is to provide 12 solar power refrigerators for young people of Basse, and we are expected to support 6 people in that component. Each young person will be given 2 solar power refrigerators, and the solar refrigerators will be solar powered. So the center, you will see moving on, the roof of the center will be transformed to become a mini solar house or solar power station. So all the equipment that are to be provided will be powered by solar.
This project is expected to address, to reduce the illegal migration and its impact, and also to empower young people in building capacities in IT, food processing, and skill training in different areas. Seydou Camara, reporting for Grts News from Basse, Upper River Region.
Seydou there. Time now to take our first break. We shall be back with international news right after. Do stay.
Hello! There's a new update from your favorite GSM operator, AfriCell.
For all of you that have struggled to buy cash power beyond $7,000, AfriCell has done it again. The limit to buy cash power is now up to $30,000. Oh yes, $30,000.
Buy all the cash power you want from your AfriMoney account by dialing *777#.
Where AfriCell goes, nobody dares to follow.
It's an amazing offer. AfriMoney just got way better. The threshold for cash in and cash out on your AfriMoney has been increased.
Where it used to be 10,000 per transaction, now it has been increased to 30,000. Meaning your AfriMoney account, you can now withdraw and deposit up to $30,000 at once.
Cashing in and out just got 3 times easier. For more info, call 777.
Where AfriCell goes, nobody dares to follow.
Following the release of the draft constitution, it is imperative that Gambians take ownership and participate fully in all the remaining constitutional building processes leading to a referendum that will usher in the new constitution and a third republic of the Gambia. The National Council for Civic Education, NCCE, reminds the public that the bill for an act to promulgate the Constitution of the Republic of the Gambia 2020 has now been completed and published in the Gazette. A second publication of the bill in the Gazette shall occur by end of August 2020 and shall be introduced in the National Assembly by the second week of September. The bill in the second and third reading respectively shall be supported by 3/4 or 75% of all National Assembly members. The bill shall then be referred by the Speaker to the Independent Electoral Commission for the referendum to be held within 6 months. In the referendum, 50% of eligible voters must participate, and 75% of which must vote for the bill. The bill shall finally be signed by the President within 7 days after certification from the Independent Electoral Commission. Therefore, the National Council for Civic Education encourages the public to keep the momentum and continue to participate fully in the entire process to its logical conclusion as stated in Section 226 of the 1997 Constitution. This message is brought to you by the National Council for Civic Education and the United Nations Development Programme.
Welcome back to Grts News. Now, the COVID-19 crisis has shown that urgent climate action is possible. Now it's time to find out if there is the political will to match it. CTN explores how governments, companies and investors are adjusting to the potential of a greener future.
The coronavirus pandemic has caused hardship and tragedy across the globe. But as the pollution cleared from our skylines, climate scientists say a mental shift they have been waiting for has also occurred.
The virus immediately shifts priorities, doesn't it? This is a huge moment in how we reshape the economy. There's already 10 trillion, roughly, US dollars of spending that's gone out the door to rescue companies, to protect livelihoods around the world. And how that's invested will have a huge impact on whether we create an economy that's fit for the future or one that's still based upon some of the more fragile and dangerous elements of the economy that we currently have.
A recent study that looked at daily emissions of greenhouse gases and pollutants highlighted key focus areas. Professor Corinne Lequere was the lead author.
Emissions dropped quite a lot at the peak of the confinement, so that was early April. On the 7th, emissions had dropped by 17% worldwide, and by the countries that were under lockdown, then it was between 25 and 30%, even a little higher for the extreme lockdowns. And the biggest factor was road transport. Because road transport responds very quickly, we now know that governments, if they put policies in place, then you could have a change in emissions very rapidly.
There was a drop of most greenhouse gases and pollutants, but carbon dioxide stays in the atmosphere for over 100 years, so the drop in emissions won't do much to slow climate change.
It also helps to see that some other sectors like power or industry were a lot slower in changes, and therefore you need to put measures that are very structural to make sure that these sectors can also reduce their emissions in the long term.
Past recessions have seen an increase in industrial activity, but after the 2008 financial crash, there was also green investment.
We saw kind of 15-20% in some cases a bit higher, of green response. That was, I think, a low watermark. And we'll see much stronger green responses this time for the reason that the world's ready. And the other point is that now, compared to 10 years ago, the public are much more on board with this. There are strong majorities in all the big economies for a green recovery.
Now, almost overnight, COVID-19 transformed how people work. Around the world, millions of people left their offices and went home to work. Making offices safe and getting people back to desks appears to be a slow process. Nicole Johnston in London takes a look at the future of work.
I don't think we'll ever go back to working in exactly the way that we worked before, and it's probably a good thing.
Mark Reed is chief executive of one of the world's largest advertising and marketing companies, with 107 sent everyone
And people have come back really pretty gradually. We started off bringing maybe 20% of the workforce back in. Then we're around 50% on alternate weeks. And I'd say today we're running at about 85, 90% of capacity. But I don't think we'll ever go back, as I said before, to having 100% of people in the office at any one time.
Many companies will find that it will be far more difficult to get people back into the office than it was to shift them to remote working in the first place. And at 1.5 to 2 meters of distance between workers, most companies will only be able to use up to 60% of their office space.
We spend about £600 million on real estate property a year. If our offices in future are 20% smaller, we have the chance to save £120 million a year that we can reinvest in people and talent and in technology.
We've noticed a massive uptick in, I think, sentiment fundamentally around wanting to reopen the workplace, wanting to get people back into offices. There are at the moment, pre a vaccine, strict conditions that you need to meet.
Well, that was all in this edition of the 8 p.m. News Bulletin. But before we take leave of you, a quick recap of the day's top stories. The Gambia government has extended the state of public emergency for another 7 days, effective Wednesday, 1st July 2020. Chief of Defense Staff has briefed President Barrow on the outcomes of a 2-week tour of military barracks and installations across the country. And cabinet ministers have been responding to a raft of questions at the legislative chambers during the second ordinary session of the National Assembly sittings. The National Centre for Arts and Culture and the British High Commission have joined forces to remember Star Leader and Avro York aircraft, which crashed at the Banjul International Airport in 1946 shortly after takeoff. Plus, the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission has engaged victims and perpetrators on forgiveness and reconciliation for peace building at an emotional ceremony in Kololi. CGTN has been exploring how governments, companies and investors are adjusting to the potential of a post-COVID-19 greener future. Well, that was all in this bulletin. Thanks for watching and join us again at 2200 hours for more news. Until then, stay tuned to GRTS for more interesting programs.